As a second option to create a texture for this object, I have the opportunity of creating a single texture to a single piece. In the previous version, we broke the helmet and the body by splitting those two pieces apart. Now that we have this object all on the same UV map, we are going to do it by just simply creating both materials, or better, the same material under two different textures, or using two different textures. So let's try doing that. In order to create that, we need to do something which is exporting out the map to be able to use it in Photoshop. For rendering Maya software, we used in the past um, a PSD networks, which is a Photoshop file. In this case, we don't want to do that because Arnold doesn't like Photoshop networks or PSD files. He likes TIFFs, IFFs, or PNGs or Targa files, but no Photoshop files. So in order to do that, we are going to use something called the UV snapshot. The UV snapshot is a way for you to create or save a file that you will bring into Photoshop to work with. In this case, we're going to change it to be a file. I'm going to call it here. It's going to be called octo underscore u out UV, which is fine. It's going to save under my images folder on my file, and it's going to save as a Maya IFF. That's totally fine. Photoshop will read that file. I'm going to make the file here 1024 by 1024. Why I'm reducing it to half of that? Because my textures are at that size. So I'm going to say apply and close. And when you see that, you see at the bottom here on your input, where your output code, you see the file got saved there. So I'm going to open up that file with Photoshop. I'm going to go and open Photoshop, so I'm not going to be using this image for now. And I'm going to open up that file that was saved under my Maya, under my images folder. And there's the Octo UV out. I'm going to open it up. And the rest is very, very light. If you get close to it, you'll see your text, your UV map right there. It's very, very light, but it is there. If I put a background image, I have this is on layer 0. If I create a new layer and I move the layer under and I apply some color to it, let me just apply some black on that using the bucket tool. You get to see the UV map there. So what I need to do is just simply grab textures and put them connected to that thing, to that map. So let me do that. I'm going to open up the texture for the granite. There is my color. And I'm going to just simply undock both files, that way I can look at them side by side, or you can just simply say workspace, arrange to vertically, that way you can see them side by side. And I'm going to grab the layer from this one, I'm going to put it on that file. That way it just gets added there, and that way I can come and move it to make sure it covers the whole area. When I do that, my grid is still there. It's very faint. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to temporarily bring the opacity down for this new texture that I just brought in. Bring it down so that I get to see what's going on there. And now I'm going to go and I'll have to bring that back up again later, but I know that all of this area is going to receive that granite texture. Now I'm going to go and bring the metal texture. So I'm going to just close this one, which I don't need anymore, and I'm going to open up the metal square, or I can use this one, no big deal. because that one is going to be just simply a copy. I'm going to just put them all both side by side. This guy just came to this side, so I'm going to grab that layer from this one, which is the metal. I'm going to dump it on this one right there, and that one just comes there. I'm going to shrink the scale of that one with my scale tool. I'm going to shrink it down in order to maintain some of the details that the metal has on it. I can close this one, I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to just bring this one down again, just to shrink it and have some of those details showing up. I'm going to actually rotate it around to make the best use of the textures there. That makes it decent enough. And now I'm going to hide the layer underneath for a moment. I'm going to bring the opacity of this one down a little bit, just so I can see through a bit more easily. Okay, so by doing that, I get to select my object. Around my object, notice that I'm not doing it on the edge, but I'm just doing outside a rough area. I'm on layer number 3, and I'm going to inverse the selection. When I say selection, inverse, that way I select outside of that area, and I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard. That way I delete anything that is outside of that area. Now I can bring back the opacity up to 100, and I can bring back the opacity to the granite texture also to 100. And before I forget, I need to turn off the grade, my UV map. I'm going to save my file as a Photoshop file just to have it as a backup. I usually save it under my source images. I create a new folder that I call work files or working files. That way, those aren't exactly the files that are going to be connected, but when I just save it as a TIFF, that's fine. Or you can save it as a post Photoshop file, that's fine. This file will not be texture, will not be connected directly to Maya. This is just my working file. I'm going to save another version of this same file. I'll say save as. This one I'm going to save as a TIFF, and I'm going to say no layers. That way it's all flattened into a single layer. I'm going to say save. I say okay here, the compression is okay, and I go back to Maya, where I simply need here to connect a new shader. Again, I'm going to do a new standard shader, Arnold standard shader. I'm going to call it standard octopus, and in here I'm going to simply connect my color to that file that I created in Photoshop, to the TIFF file. Again, you cannot connect it to the Photoshop file because it won't work. So I'm gonna look for it right there. Oh, I made a mistake because I saved it onto the different location. Let me just go and find it on the right location. Let me just pause this here. Let me just find it. Alright, I have made a mistake. I saved it to the images folder, and that file, this file, these working files, and the octopus, actually not that one, this one should go under the source images. So let's go and grab that folder. I'm going to just cut it from there. I'm going to put it in the source images folder where it should be located. So I'm just copying it there. It won't do it until I close Photoshop. Try again. There it goes. And I'm going to now connect. There it is. I'm going to connect that octo texture right there to my object. And I need to assign that shader to this object. So if I hit 6 on my keyboard, I get to see the material applied to it. There is not bump connected to it right now. If I wanted to do the bump, I most likely will go on Photoshop and fine tune that image, or I could try reusing the same one because it's a grayscale. I could try reconnecting it to the geometry component. So middle mouse button, I grab it and place it onto the bump mapping word, and I can change the depth to say 0.03, just very very small. And now I can go and create my Arnold light sky dome and test render it. That was my version when it was all in. Just save it just to see the difference. When it was both objects separately, I'm going to render it out again. So this is the version of the same object, but both are connected, all of the object onto a single piece. Alright, so if I save both, I can make the comparison between one and the other. There's a little bit of difference on the second one. Second one loses a little bit of resolution there, but in essence it's the same thing. Okay, I hope this helps you using creating connecting textures to your objects.